The forest had a heartbeat. At least that's what my grandpa used to say. As a kid, I thought it was just one of his old tales. But standing here, alone, with the sun dipping below the tree line, I could feel it. A thumping rhythm beneath my feet, as if the very ground was alive. I set up camp by a small brook, the water babbling like quiet laughter. The fire crackled to life, its glow warding off the creeping chill of the evening. I roasted some marshmallows, their sweetness a stark contrast to the bitter cold that settled in with the darkness. Night in the woods is a different kind of silence. It's heavy, filled with whispers of rustling leaves and the distant calls of nocturnal creatures. I zipped up my tent, the nylon barrier thin and flimsy, a poor shield against the vast wilderness that surrounded me. I woke to the sound of footsteps, not the soft tread of deer, but the deliberate, heavy footfalls of something bipedal. My heart raced as I reached for the flashlight, its beam slicing through the pitch black. The footsteps stopped. Silence. Then a low growl, a sound no human could make, rumbled just outside. I don't know how long I stayed frozen, the light shaking in my hand. When I finally dared to look, the night had reclaimed its quiet, but the ground outside told a different story. Footprints circled my tent, large and deep, with claw marks that dragged between each step. As dawn broke, I packed up hastily, the thrill of the hike lost to a primal urge to flee. But every rustle in the bushes, every snap of a twig, sent jolts of fear through me. I was no longer a visitor here. I was prey. I never saw what stalked me that night. But sometimes when the city is quiet, I can still hear that growl, feel the forest's heartbeat, and I know some tales are more than just stories. The forest was alive with whispers, and as I hurried along the path, the sense of being followed grew stronger. Every shadow seemed to move, every tree appeared to watch me pass. The once familiar trail now felt like a labyrinth, each turn leading me deeper into uncertainty. I reached a clearing, and for a moment, I thought I had escaped the oppressive atmosphere of the woods. But then I saw it, a tent, much like mine, abandoned and torn. The fabric was shredded, the poles snapped like twigs. Whatever had visited me last night had been here too. A journal lay among the debris, its pages scattered by the wind. I gathered them, curiosity piqued despite the fear. The entries were frantic, the handwriting shaky. The camper had seen something that shouldn't exist outside of nightmares. They wrote of eyes that glowed in the dark, of a presence that was both there and not there, a creature of shadow and malice. I should have left then, should have run until the forest was a memory. But I needed to know. The last entry spoke of a place where the trees bent away, as if in fear, where the ground was blackened and nothing grew. A place the camper believed was the heart of the forest's darkness. I found it by following the crows. They circled above, their calls loud and harsh. The trees did bend away, and the ground was scorched earth. In the center, a pit, deep and wide, with edges that looked like they had been melted by intense heat. I peered into the abyss, and for a moment, I saw something move, a shape too large to comprehend, a mass of writhing darkness. The air grew cold, and I felt a pull, a desire to jump, to join whatever dwelled below. I stumbled back, the spell broken by a sharp pain in my leg. I had been cut, a small wound, but it was deep, and I hadn't felt it happen. Blood dripped onto the scorched ground, and as it did, the whispers grew louder, angrier. I ran until my lungs burned and my legs ached. I didn't stop until I burst from the tree line into the light of day and the gaze of shocked onlookers. They asked questions, but I had no answers. I only had the journal, the entries that ended abruptly, a story without an ending. I never went back to the forest, but sometimes, when the night is still, I hear whispers on the wind, and I wonder if the forest is calling me, beckoning me to return to the heart of its darkness. always thought the woods were a place of peace, a sanctuary where one could escape the noise of daily life. At the leaf shattered the summer, I went camping with my friends in the dense forests of the Pacific Northwest. It was supposed to be a weekend of laughter and memories, a break from the monotony of our college routines. We were 5. Jake, the jokester, Sarah, the planner, Emily, the peacemaker, Matt, the adventurer, and myself, the storyteller. We had found the perfect spot, a clearing by a serene lake, surrounded by towering pines that whispered secrets in the wind. The first night was everything we had hoped for. We set up our tents, cooked over an open fire, and shared stories under the stars. But as the fire died down and we retreated to our tents, an unsettling silence enveloped the campsite. It was the kind of silence that felt heavy, almost suffocating. In the dead of night, a sudden snap of a twig jolted me awake. My heart raced as I listened for more sounds, but there was nothing, just the sound of my friends' soft breathing in the neighboring tents. I told myself it was just a deer or a raccoon, but the unease lingered, clawing at the back of my mind. The next day, we hiked through the woods, but the beauty of nature couldn't distract me from the feeling that we were being watched. Shadows seemed to move just beyond the corner of my eye, and every rustle of leaves sent a shiver down my spine. As dusk approached, we returned to our campsite, only to find our belongings scattered and the tents slashed. Panic set in, but it was Matt who calmed us down, insisting it was probably just a bear looking for food. We should have left then, but we didn't. We cleaned up the mess, patched up the tents, and convinced ourselves that we were safe. At night, the forest felt alive with hidden threats, and sleep was a distant dream. It was Sarah who first noticed the figures standing at the edge of the clearing. Humanoid shapes, unnaturally tall, with limbs that twisted in ways that defied anatomy. They stood motionless, watching us with an intensity that turned my blood to ice. What happened next is a blur of terror and confusion. We grabbed what we could and fled into the night, guided only by the moon's pale light and the primal urge to survive. The forest that had once seemed so welcoming now felt like a labyrinth designed to trap us. We ran until our lungs burned and our legs gave out, until the first light of dawn began to seep through the trees. And when we finally stumbled out of the woods, we were not the same. We had left something behind in that forest, something that still haunts my dreams to this day. We ran without direction, the underbrush clawing at our ankles, and the trees seeming to close in around us. The figures, whatever they were, did not chase us, but the fear of them drove us forward, deeper into the unknown. As the first rays of dawn broke through the canopy, we found ourselves at the edge of a cliff, the land dropping away into a fog-shrouded valley. We were lost, disoriented, and exhausted. Our supplies were gone, save for the few items we had managed to grab in our frantic escape. "We need to keep moving," Matt insisted, his voice barely above a whisper. "They might still be out there." But where could we go? We had no map, no compass, and the forest seemed to have a will of its own. We decided to follow the cliffside, hoping it would lead us to a road or a trail. Hours turned into days, and the forest showed no sign of ending. We rationed what little food we had, drank from streams that we hoped were clean, and at night, we huddled together for warmth, jumping at every sound. It was on the third day that we found the cabin. It was old, the wood rotting, and the windows broken, but it offered shelter. Inside, we found remnants of its previous occupants: a dusty journal, a rusted hunting knife, and a box of matches that felt like a treasure. The journal was written by someone named Thomas, who claimed the forest was alive, that it had a heart, and it was dark and twisted. He wrote of creatures that were neither human nor animal, that hunted in the silence, and how he had come to fear the night. We should have left that place, but the illusion of safety was too tempting. We decided to stay until we regained our strength. At night, we lit a fire in the fireplace, the first warmth we had felt in days, and tried to convince ourselves that we were going to make it out. But as the shadows danced on the walls, we heard it, the faint sound of singing, a melody that was both beautiful and sad. It seemed to come from the forest itself, and as it grew louder, we felt a pull, a desire to walk into the woods and join the chorus. I don't know how long we sat there, listening to the haunting song, but eventually it stopped, and we were left with the silence once again. We took turns keeping watch, but no one slept that night. The next morning, Sarah was gone. Her sleeping bag was empty, and there was no sign of a struggle. We called out for her, searched the area, but it was as if the forest had swallowed her whole. Panic set in once more, and we knew we couldn't stay in the cabin. We gathered what little we had and set out again, the loss of Sarah hanging over us like a dark cloud. Days blurred together, and the forest seemed to stretch on forever. We were starving, dehydrated, and losing hope. And then we saw it, a light, flickering in the distance, a beacon of hope. We stumbled towards it, our bodies pushed beyond their limits, and emerged from the trees to find a road, and along it, a small diner, its neon sign buzzing in the twilight. The people inside looked at us like we were ghosts, and maybe we were. We told them about the figures, the cabin, the singing, and Sarah. They listened, their faces growing pale, and when we finished, the old man behind the counter spoke up. "You're lucky to be alive," he said. "That forest doesn't like visitors. Not since the mill closed down and the workers disappeared. They say it's cursed, that the trees remember the blood that was spilled." We never went back for Sarah. The forest had claimed her, and we were too afraid to challenge it. But sometimes, when the night is still, I swear I can hear her voice, singing that same sad melody, calling me back to the woods.